Why May 2020 is going to be a huge month moving forward for the stock market? Are stock prices going to continue to rise and lead to a start of a sustainable bull market run, or are prices going to decline? There are many different things that will affect stock prices moving forward, but there are two main things that I'm looking out for that I believe will indicate where stock prices are going to move in the month of May. As we move towards the end of the month of April, let's take a look at a recap of some of the major events and news that happened in April 2020, right? So the first major news that happened was on April 2nd, right? So on April 2nd, the news releases that there are over 10 million Americans who applied for unemployment benefits in just the month of March as the economy collapsed, right? So that is over 10 million Americans who are unemployed. Then on April 6th, the report mentions that 29% of the US economy is frozen by the virus. So around 1/3 of the US economy is on a standstill because of this pandemic, right? And then on April 9th, they mentioned that the Fed will pump another 2.3 trillion into the economy, right? So this is a stimulus package from the Fed. So when I take a look at the Fed, I like to view them as like Tony Stark. Sure, they're not as cool as Tony Stark, but they have the same amount of money, if not more than Tony Stark, right? So the Fed is like Tony Stark. And then the virus is like the Hawk, right? So right now the Hawk is going around wrecking and destroying the economy and the stock market, right? So that's the virus. So the virus is like the Hawk. And the Fed using the stimulus package. So the stimulus package, to me, I like to see it as like the Hawkbuster, right? So for all you guys who are Avengers fans and who have watched Avengers, the Hulkbuster is the machine designed and built by Tony Stark to contain and fight the Hulk, right? Because the Hulk in the Avengers movie is one of the strongest and most powerful characters out there, right? So Tony Stark designed this Hulkbuster to specifically fight and contain the Hulk, right? So right now, there's a battle between the Hulk and the Hulkbuster, right? So the Hulk is the virus and the Hulkbuster is the 2.3 trillion stimulus package, right? So there's a battle going on right now. And so far, the Hulkbuster has been quite effective in dealing with the Hulk, right? So that's that's a bit of how I like to view the Fed, the stimulus package, and the virus, right? So that happened in April 9th, right? And then on April 26th, they mentioned that the US closes in on 1 million coronavirus cases, but at the same time, some states are beginning to reopen, right? So there's a gradual reopening of the economy. And then on April 27, they mentioned that the US oil prices drops nearly 25% to finish below $13 a barrel, right? So these are some of the major news and events that happened in the month of April 2020. Let's take a look at the price charts and see how the S&P 500 has fared during the month of April. Right, so this is the price chart for the S&P 500 or the SPY. So we'll start at the 1st of April and we'll end on the 28th of April. So why the 28th of April is because I'm filming this video on the 28th of April, right? So during this period, how much did prices increase by? So prices have increased by 16.9%, right? So in midst of all those bleak news, the S&P 500 has actually increased and rose by 16.9%, right? So now that we know that the stock market has increased by 16.9% for the month of April, moving forward, where do I see prices heading to, right? So there are two main things that I'm looking out for that will give me an indication of where prices are likely to head in the future. The first thing is the earnings season. So the earnings seasons during the week of 27th to 30th of April. So some of the companies that are going to release their quarterly earnings this week are Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, McDonald's, Starbucks, and Google, and other companies, right? So why am I looking out for the quarterly earnings of these companies, and why are the quarterly earnings for these companies important? This is an article by CNN, right? So the article mentioned that the 5 largest companies in the S&P 500, all tech companies, account for nearly 1/5 or 20% of the market capitalization of the S&P 500, right? So these companies, these 5 largest companies are Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. And all these companies are stated to release their quarterly earnings this week, right? So these companies make up a large chunk and large portion of the S&P 500 and the US stock market. So the stock prices of these companies will have a significant impact on the stock price of the S&P 500 and the US stock market as a whole. And where the stock prices of these companies are going to head to will have a significant impact on the US stock market and the S&P 500 in the month of May. And the quarterly earnings of these companies are going to have an impact on the stock prices of these companies. That is why the quarterly earnings for these companies will have a major impact on where the S&P 500 will head to in the month of May. So that is why the quarterly earnings of these companies will have an impact on the S&P 500 moving forward in the month of May. Right? So right now, are prices going to increase or are prices going to decline? Right? So that is the main question, right? So the first thing that I'm looking out for that will give me an indication of where prices are likely to hit in the month of May is the quarterly earnings of these largest companies, right? So the quarterly earnings of these companies are more towards the fundamental side of things. The second thing that I'm looking at to give me an indication of where prices are likely to head to in the month of May is a bit more towards the technical side, right? So the technical side, it requires us to look at the price charts. So right now, let's dive into my price chart and let me share with you the thing that I'm looking out for that will indicate to me where prices are likely to head to in the month of May. Okay, so this is the price chart for the S&P 500 or the SPY. So where we are currently at is this candlestick over here. So if you look at this price chart here, you'll notice that prices are currently trading in a range, right? Trading in a range or in a consolidation. So what does it mean by trading in a range and in a consolidation? So it basically means that prices are moving sideways. So there's no clear direction in where prices are moving. So prices are not moving in a clear uptrend or prices are not moving in a clear downtrend. So that is when prices are in a range or in a consolidation. Can you see that prices are moving sideways? So there's no clear direction in where prices are moving right now. So when prices are trading in a range for extended periods of time, this typically means that the smart money and the big players, so players such as your hedge funds, your big institutions, your investors such as Warren Buffett and etc., are either accumulating or distributing their shares, right? So what does it mean by accumulating and distributing? What does accumulating and accumulation mean, right? So accumulating and accumulation means that the smart money and the big players are buying up shares. So when the smart money and big players are slowly buying up shares, we call it accumulation. And distribution is when the smart money and big players are selling shares, right? So that's the difference between accumulation and distribution. So when prices are trading in a range or when prices are moving sideways for an extended period of time, this typically indicates that the smart money and the big players are accumulating or distributing shares. So why are prices trading in a range or moving sideways when the smart money and big players are accumulating or distributing their shares? So this is what happens when the smart money accumulates shares, right? So when the smart money accumulates shares, these players are, like I mentioned, they tend to be hedge funds, big institutions, and your billionaire investors such as Warren Buffett and so on, right? So when this smart money want to buy shares, they usually deal with millions of dollars, right? Millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So they have a lot of money, right? So when they buy shares, they tend to drive up stock prices, right? Just because that the amount they are dealing with is such a huge amount, right? So when this smart money and big players buy shares, they tend to drive stock prices up, right? So if they do it at one go, they'll drive stock prices up by a lot. So this smart money and big players don't want to drive share prices up when they're buying, right? Because when they drive share prices up when they're buying, they're paying higher prices for the stock. So what they do is they tend to do it in different stages. So they buy in smaller amounts at different stages, right? So when they buy smaller amounts at different stages, you can see that prices tend to move sideways during this period, right? So the same is true for your distribution or when the smart money and big players are selling their shares, right? So when the smart money and big players are selling their shares, they usually sell in the millions of dollars, right? So when they sell in the millions of dollars, if they sell all at one go, what will happen to prices? Prices will decline by a fair bit, right? And these smart money and big players, they don't want to sell at a low price, right? So what they do is instead of selling all at one go and driving prices down, they do it in different stages and in smaller amounts, right? So when they do it in smaller amounts, prices tend to move sideways during this period. So when prices are trading in a range and are moving sideways, this typically means that the smart money and big players are either accumulating or distributing their shares. So the next question would be, are these smart money and big players accumulating or are they distributing their shares? So in other words, are they buying their shares now or are they selling their shares? So that is the big question. There are a few things that we can look out for, but we can only confirm whether they are accumulating or distributing the shares after the event has already happened, right? But that being said, there are certain things that we can look out for that will give us a good indication of whether the smart money are accumulating or are they distributing their shares, right? So one indication to determine whether the smart money are accumulating or distributing the shares is how prices react to this range, right? So if prices break out of the resistance, so the resistance is like the price ceiling, right? So if prices break out of the price ceiling, this indicates to me that it is likely that the smart money have been accumulating shares during this period, right? But if prices break below the support level, so the support level is like a price floor, this indicates to me that the smart money are likely to be distributing their shares during this period. And being a savvy investor and trader, we want to invest and trade where the smart money are placing their money at, right? So if the smart money are buying shares here, then when prices break out of this resistance level, we want to buy so that we are on the same side as the smart money and we'll make money as they make money, right? But if prices break below the support level, this indicates that it's likely that the smart money are distributing their shares during this period, right? So if one strategy to use is to, when prices break below this support level, is to short the stock or buy puts and so on and so forth, right? There are many different strategies out there. So that's the second thing that I'm looking out for, whether prices break above the resistance level or break below the support level. And where prices break from will indicate to me where prices are likely to head to in the month of May. So hopefully you guys have learned something. If you have learned something and have liked the video, make sure you smash that like button because it will help the channel grow. And if you want to learn more about investing, trading and the stock market, make sure you subscribe to my channel because each week I release one new video about investing, trading and the stock market. I'll see you in those videos. To your financial success.